Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. Hope everyone had a great week. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving holiday week. We were away for a couple of weekends, but we are back in action today. I'm excited to be with you. So we're going to get straight to today's show. The title is I Can See Straight Through You. And the topic is weak plots and how to fix them. All right. So every writer has heard this at least once. The plot feels thin, or worse, I saw everything coming. Nothing deflates a story faster. Okay, so weak plot lines, they make readers feel like they can see straight through the narrative, right? And instead of being absorbed, they are mentally rewriting the book you've already worked so hard on. Now, what I say to you, I speak from facts because I cannot sit down. I'm talking about watching a movie and not reading at this moment, but a lot of times we watch movies that are based off books. But anyway, if I am sitting down watching a movie with my family, we can barely get through the movie without them ad-libbing or either trying to rewrite the story, asking questions because they can see the plot holes already and they are not impressed. And so as readers, we definitely don't want to see the plot holes. We want a plot that is so tight that you can't even fit a straw through it. Okay, and I'm talking about a broom straw. All right, but here's the good news about that. Weak plots, they are not fatal, okay? They can be fixable, and that's the good news. And most of the time, the solution, it isn't even about starting over from scratch, okay? It's about strengthening what is already there. So you already have something to work with. You just got to work within those boundaries to make it better, okay? And that's what we are talking about today, fixing those weak plots. Okay, so now let's break down why the plot lines just fall flat. Okay, and how to rebuild them into something that is unforgettable, right? But we want a good unforgettable, not a bad unforgettable. All right, so let's talk about why plots feel weak. So we're going to do that first of all. So a weak plot, it usually has one or more of these issues. Nothing is at stake. You don't see anything that that is causing any type of fear or action or remorse. Okay, so that is a weak plot. So that's the first thing. Nothing is at stake. There is nothing risking the life of this character, or nothing that is drastic enough to even be awarded as a plot. All right. So if the protagonist doesn't risk losing something meaningful, right? Like their life or their love interest or even their reputation and their family or even their identity, readers, they really don't care about the outcome because you've already lost them. Okay. So the second thing is the conflict is too easy. Okay. We don't want those things that are easily solvable, because we want to get to the end of the movie and see how that's going to work out, or the end of the book to see how that's going to work out. I often get books and movies confused because, they sort of go together for me. Movies and plots and books and plots, they sort of all just conjoin for me. Okay, so if I'm confusing you, just let me know. All right, so again, the conflict is too easy. That's another one of those weak plot lines. Okay, the conflict, it actually needs layers, right? So if your character solves every obstacle on page one, and they do it with very little effort, then that story is going to feel empty. Okay. So the next thing is predictability. All right. So predictability, it does not mean bad. Okay. But predictable without emotional payoff. That's what that predictability means. So, and we know how boring that is. Okay. So readers, they follow stories for discovery, right? And not just to be put on autopilot. Okay. They don't like that. I don't like that. As a reader, I write, but I also read books, and I don't like that. I don't like to be able to predict how this story is going to end before I even get to like the second chapter. All right, so the next thing is, which is number 4, the plot moves, but the character doesn't. You know, a storyline packed with events, but zero internal change, that is not a plot, okay? It's a travel itinerary. That's what that is, all right? A step-by-step picture of what's about to happen, and we don't want that. We want a plot that actually moves with the character. So now, let's flip the switch and talk about how to strengthen any plot and do it fast to increase the stakes, all right? So you need to ask yourself, what happens if the character fails? And what do they lose? And why should readers care? Well, now we want to double it. All right. So first of all, we're going to do this equation. So high stakes equal high tension, right? So we want to give the protagonist some agency. All right. A strong plot requires a character that is actively making choices and not just reacting to events. So, you know, when the characters try too hard or they fail and then they try again, that's when the story becomes alive. Okay. That gives your story life when that protagonist has some agency. All right. So now we want to add in some meaningful obstacles and not just random chaos. We don't want that. We want to have those meaningful obstacles. We want obstacles that should challenge your beliefs, that should challenge your emotions, should challenge your identity, and also challenge those relationships that are happening within that story. We need all of that going on as meaningful obstacles, okay? Because they make sense and they give life to the characters. They make your character, anything that makes your character feel uncomfortable, readers love that, okay? They love strife. They love that discomfort in stories because, you know, readers are human and they have emotions. So they want all of those emotions engaged when they're reading a story, right? And so we need to make sure that our characters who are not real, but still they're having all of those emotions challenged within that story, okay? So now let's talk about how we build plots around character wounds, all right? So why does this character face this problem right now? That's the question. So the most powerful plots, they come from internal wounds, which is fears and flaws. And, you know, when the plot forces the protagonist to confront what they're trying to avoid, that story magic happens, right? We've seen it over and over and over again when we watch movies and also when we read books, okay? We need that plot to be built around all of those character wounds because it gives life, once again, to those characters, okay? It gives them emotions when you add in the conflict and all of those other features into the story. So now you need to ask these questions while you are revising. I'm talking to the readers now. So does my story escalate in pressure with each act? And what is my protagonist most afraid of? Okay? And when does the story twist emotionally? And then, last but not least, does each character change something? So if the answer is no, that's where your revision lives. Okay? So this is the secret to having strong plots. because it isn't just about events, it's about evolution. You need that. You need to evolve. We evolve in our own lives, right, on a daily basis. So we want that same action for our characters. We don't want them to stay in that one position. We want them to evolve throughout that story. If they start out weak, we want them to end strong. If they start out strong, if they are the protagonist, we want some things that happen within the middle of that story that sort of takes away from their power, give them some power struggles, and then by the end, they have evolved back into that character that we were familiar with at the beginning, but they added on a few extra layers at the end of that story, meaning that they have evolved past how they started. Okay, that's what we want to do. We want to see all of that character growth because that is so important. Now let's talk about, this evolution, because weak plot lines, they are really weak transformations. Okay, we don't want that. We don't want any weak plot lines because that kills the story. It dies. We've talked about stories dying on the vine. We don't want that to happen. We want them to flourish and to be fruitful and to multiply. Okay, especially in numbers when we're talking about readers buying books. We want to do that. Okay. Because readers, they just don't want to know what happens next, right? They want to watch characters change because of what happens, okay? So character growth, that is your plot. And once that clicks, everything deepens automatically, okay? We like those, a lot of people call them slow burns, but not necessarily a slow burn, but we want to see that evolution and we want to see it progress, at a rational rate. We don't want to see them go from 0 to 60 in the first chapter. We want to see that migration all the way through the story, that evolution all the way through the story until we get to the end, because we need to see those things in order to build on the story as a writer, but also for the reader. They like a story that builds, and a story that builds at a natural pace. It's not going too fast. It's not slow. It's just perfect. Okay. So that is the target. That's what we need to do. That's what we're aiming for when we are creating those strong plot lines. We don't like weak plot lines. And if you're a reader, or if you're not a reader, if you like watching movies, this still applies. If you're watching a movie, you still want to have strong plot lines. You don't want to be able to watch the first scene in a story just to know how it's going to end before you even get to that point of it. Okay. So that same thing applies to if you are reading a book and your characters are strong, the plot lines are strong, there are no holes in it. That's what you want. That's what you need. All right. So this is my final thoughts on all of this. All right. So, weak plots, they don't mean weak writers. Okay. So I want you to just go ahead and erase that thought from your head. It doesn't mean that you are a weak writer. It just means that now you have something to build upon. Okay. If you feel that your plot is weak, that gives you the advantage to go in and change that. Okay. To make it better. Because there is potential and it is waiting to be unlocked. Okay, so every story can be strengthened with sharper stakes and all of those layered conflicts and all of that deeper emotional challenges. And then when the readers, when they feel that story rather than observe it, they stop seeing it through, they stop seeing through it, and then they start living inside of it. So it's always good when your readers can see themselves within that story. That's a good thing. So the next time you look at your draft and you think, I can see straight through you, remember that's simply the beginning of building something stronger. All right, folks, that is the show for today. Again, I would ask that you will listen, like, and share. Go to Podbean. You can find me. You can Google me, Podbean, Vivian E. Moore, book chat at Podbean, and it should pop up. It should elevate all the places where you can find my podcast. All right. So as I always say before I end each and every episode, remember to tell those who you care about the most how you feel about them today, because tomorrow is not promised and it may be the only chance you get to say it. So on that note, I love you. I hope you love me back. And until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple.
It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.